Tēnā rā koutou katoa e te iwi. Nau mai, hara mai, ki tēnei Puna Kōrero o te Nehenehenui. That's right, welcome e te iwi. It's another exciting, engaging, interactive Puna Kōrero o te Nehenehenui. I'm glad to have you guys on board. This is a special broadcasting across our MFM platforms, Twitter, Whare Kōrero app, and right here on MFM Te Reo o te iwi Facebook page. So tēnā rā koutou katoa. It's like this is number 6 now that we've done on a Thursday evening, and I'm your host, Leon Hemara. I'm glad to have you with me again tonight. It's like I go on a date with my iwi every single Thursday night, so I look forward to it, and these engaging interactive kōreros. And a big kaupapa tonight, of course. A lot of people are talking about it, and we will be talking about the recent government rollout of the COVID-19 response in Aotearoa and the traffic light system, as we talked about last week. But more in depth in how does it affect our marae, our tikanga, our kawa, our whānau, and us as people. So it's a very important one tonight, and one that everybody has been talking about lately. So I'm glad and privileged to be here with you tonight. And I'm not alone once again. We've got beautiful panelists that have stepped in tonight, and they are tuned in with us right now. And some of them are familiar. They've been here before, and some are new panelists. So e mihi ana kia koutou katoa, aku whanaunga. Tēnā koutou.
Tēnā koe te whanaunga.
Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora. Just for our whānau at home, we'll go around the screen and we'll have a quick intro, and I think we'll start with Tiriana. Tēnā koe te tuakana.
Tēnā rā tātou, ko e tēnei, ko Tiriana Anderson tōku ingoa. He moko puna tēnei o Te Ahoroa marae, o Waipapa marae, o Marokopa marae, o Tirā, te koraha. Tēnā rā tātou.
Tēnā koe te tuakana. Tiriana, a wiki wira. Tēnā koe.
Mauri ora e te whānau, he uri tēnei no Ngāti Waiora, no Ngāti Runga te Rangi. He mokopuna tēnei o te whānau wetere, te whānau eke tone, me te whānau rauputu. Ko kiwira pōkiha tōku ingoa. Mauri ora.
Kia ora e te tuhine. Glad to have you on board with us once again. Always a pleasure. And another new panelist tonight, taku tuakana. Shannon, tēnā koe.
Kia ora tātou. Ako Shannon Manawaiti ahau. Ako Ngāti Rora, Ngāti Waiora, te hapu. Mana poto te iwi, ko te kuiti pā te marae. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe, Shannon. Tēnā koutou katoa. To our whānau at home, don't forget this is another engaging, interactive kōrero, so we will be taking questions from the floor. You can type them in the chat below in the live Facebook chat, and we will do our utmost best to answer every single question that you guys throw in there. Right. Speaking of questions, we're going to get straight into it because we've got a lot to talk about. But just a reminder, this could be a more longer conversation, but we're going to start the conversation tonight. And just a reminder, we're all in a safe space at the moment for our panelists and, of course, for our people at home that are throwing comments into the comments place as well. So kia kaha koutou, everybody tuned in at home. Right, let's get into our first question. I'm going to go around the panelists, and we'll start with Tiriana again. So this question, Tiriana, is just how do you feel about the current COVID situation here in Ngāti Maniapoto, with the rising case numbers, with some members of our iwi who aren't doing the right things when we're in those situations, and just in a general census, what's your whakaaro on our current situation here at home?
Tēnā tātou, tēnā koe I tērā patai, because I think for me, I refer back to the Ngā Marae tōpuhui that was held just yesterday, if I remember right. Our auntie Leanne Green, she put it absolutely perfect. When it comes to our situation at home, within Maniapoto, e aroha kauana. E aroha kauana ki o tātou whanaunga, o tātou mokopuna, e kaua nei i tēnei aupēhitanga, o tēnei ao hau me ki. Yeah, it's not the best situation we want to be in, but I know we can, as a iwi, come together. Kia ora.
Kia ora, bro. Thank you for that. Same question for you, Wikiwira. What's your thoughts on the current situation in Nehenehenui? Also, just recently, the Auckland borders have opened as well. So what's your whakaaro and your kōrero around that, Wikiwira?
Yeah, I think our people have made it through so much more, and that we have the skills and capabilities to deal with this raru and this ngangara. I think it comes down to many factors why our whānau may not be following those rules, and I think it comes down to also, you know, sometimes we need to make sure that our systems, so from a government level, how do we ensure that they are done with tikanga and te ao Māori in mind? So I think there's a number of factors, but I think our people have got through worse and we'll make it through. That's me.
Kia ora tuine, kia ora. Same question for you, Shan. What's your whakaaro, bro, on our situation here at home?
Yeah, our current situation it speaks for itself, I think, cousin. It's out of control as far as I'm concerned. It's a bit disheartening to hear kōrero floating around about what some of our whānau are actually doing at the current moment. You know, this government puts rules and regulations in place to help protect ourselves, and when you hear they're blatantly blatantly not following those rules, yeah, it's disheartening to say the least. But I think outside of Auckland, I think we're the epicenter of COVID right now in New Zealand, which is, you know, from my perspective, being the heart of Ngāti Rora, that's quite embarrassing, really. I'll have to say that.
Tēnā koe, Shan. Yeah. Tēnā koe. Thank you for your honesty on that pātai too, cousin. E mihi ana kia koe. Now, I've got a question for Shannon and Wikiwira, and I'll throw it to you first, Wiki. Both of you are both trustees of your marae. So the traffic light system has impacted our whānau in many different ways. Some have issues with it, some don't. But should our marae be vaccinated or not? That's part of the question. And as marae reps of yourselves, has your marae have had that discussion around the framework? And what are your marae's position on that as well? We'll go to you, Wikiwira, and then we'll go to Shan.
Yeah, good question, Kaz. I think there's heaps of stuff going on, and I think our people have been through a lot over the last 2 years. And yep, at our marae we've had those conversations, still having those conversations because there's so many things we want to consider. I think the main things that, the theme that comes through when we talk about it in our trustee hui is connection is number one. How do we ensure that our people are connected to their tūranga waiwai, to their marae, to have the ability to come home, be on their whenua with their people? And then the second thing is safety. So how do we keep them safe so that they can experience all those beautiful things about our marae and about our culture and being with each other, but still keep them safe. So for us, it's about putting in small systems. So whether it's, you know, like we've talked about in the past, having somebody to check them at the door, make sure that they're okay, manaki them into our whare, have a manaki crew that cleans up after each rōpū. Those things we put in place so that our people can experience their tūranga waiwai. So there's a lot of back and forth, and our stance at the moment is essentially that: how do we ensure this connection, but safe connection, because we're all going through so much during COVID that it's essential that we all go home at some point.
Kia ora, Wiki. Kia ora. Same question for you, Shan. I'll just read so you can answer it again, bro. So has Tikiti Pa had the discussions around the traffic light system, and what is your guys' stance on that tōkana? Kia koe.
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Kaz. So just recently, we actually had a Zoom hui with our people. Well, we sort of thought as trustees would give our people an opportunity to give some kōrero around this situation, because obviously this situation is nationwide. It's a situation that the whole of the country is in discussion at the moment, or if have not already. And so our whānau came online, and there was quite a good turnout on our Zoom hui, and they gave a good feedback around it, around the kaupapa. And I think generally speaking, a lot of our people are for. I mean, our health and safety is paramount. So, in the scenario with vaccinated and unvaccinated, there was talk around how we could facilitate that kind of action here on the marae. There was feedback around, well, if, are we going to use vaccination passes or not? So currently, the trustees of Tikiti Pa have actually closed the marae, and we're closed till February of next year. We did that because of the current situation with the rising number of COVID cases. But we do recognise that there are some of our whānau that are unvaccinated. And that's, at the end of the day, that choice lies with individuals. You can coerce them into getting vaccinated and that sort of carry on. But I mean, at the end of the day, the choice belongs to the individual, and we recognise there's a large majority of our whānau that are vaccinated, but there's some that are not. And so it's navigating our way through how do we facilitate those whānau that aren't vaccinated on the marae. So next year, sort of probably in the beginning of February, we'll have a hui amongst trustees and reassess and reevaluate the situation to see how we are at that time, and make a decision, I suppose, moving forward. I suppose a lot of the marae within Maniputu perhaps look to this marae being the so-called tūranga waiwai of Maniputu marae, and probably look to us for direction. I'm not too sure, but it's as a trustee of the marae, and I've been a trustee for 6 years now, it's been one of the biggest, heaviest, hardest conversations that we've had as trustees. We've discussed various things over the period that I've been a trustee, but this kaupapa would have to be one of the biggest kaupapa that we've had to make a decision on. Kia ora, Kaz.
Kia ora, Sam. Kia ora. Thank you for that. Beautiful. Now, I'm going to throw this one towards Tiriana. It's about tikanga. And Tiriana, as you are a kaiako of tikanga for te wānanga o Aotearoa, this one's for you, bro. As Māori, we have suspended some tikanga in and around our marae already, which is hongi, hariru, which is acceptable at the moment because it's for the paramount safety of our people, our whānau. But do you think that the current traffic light system is going to throw more of our tikanga into that mix as well? For example, if you're unvaccinated, you won't be allowed on the marae, and those sort of things. So to you, bro, what does that look like tikanga wise, and your whakaaro on of us as people being pushed into that with tikanga being totally suspended? So what's your whakaaro on that, Tiriana?
Just a quick correction there, cuz I'm not working at Te Wānanga Aotearoa anymore. I'm still teaching tikanga, but for he kura tui, he kura ika. But cool question, cuz I think the key thing for me when it comes to our tikanga and our marae is going back to the basics, like aroha, manaakitanga, you know, all those quite, you know, basic, but those are our tikanga, our essential tikanga. And so long as we are upholding those, kei te tika. Now, with the current traffic light system that we have, it will be somewhat hard for us to practice manaakitanga, especially when we have to actually, it's like we're going through apartheid again. It's like our whānau are being segregated. Okay, you've got whānau that are vaccinated and whānau that are not vaccinated. I think my question would rather be is, why did we get vaccinated? Did we get vaccinated so that we were to keep COVID away from us, or are we vaccinated to keep the non-vaccinated away from us? Because I took the vaccine so that that other 10% of my whānau or of Aotearoa would be safe. But it's the discussion that's happening at the moment is not such. It's more so around how do we keep the unvaccinated away from the vaccinated, when in actual fact, the reason for the vaccine is to ensure safety when we are around those that are vulnerable, because when you're not vaccinated, you will be vulnerable. And our right and our role on our marae when it comes to our tikanga is to manaaki all the same. Aroha atu ki te tangata. It's the suspension of hariru and hongi, all those different tikanga, we've found innovative ways to actually overcome those challenges. Different ways, like, you know, there's ina te maha, there are many different modes of hariru and hongi out there now that you can use. But another thing too, another observation that I'd like to make in this tikanga space when it comes to our marae is that there were actually 3 options that I can't remember exactly whether it was the health committee or who it was that does this for its the government, but they gave the government 3 options, and A was a wide application of the vaccination or the vaccine passes. B was a targeted application of it, and C was no government requirements. They were actually encouraged to implement B, which is a targeted application, which means that only high risk events would need to use vaccine passes and all that sort of thing. And see, that's where the risk for COVID is. And if we look at Te Tokanga Nui Anoho Marae, we had a tangihanga there with one of our good whānau. He passed away, I think it was during COVID last year. Yeah, it was. Or no, it might have been this year, beginning of this year. Nate, and when we had Nate's tangi at Te Tokanga Nui Anoho, I may be wrong here, but I don't remember hearing of any COVID cases being recorded there, and that was quite a big tangihanga. The processes that were in place, that were implemented by Te Kuiti Pā were superb, impeccable. And I think we should be focusing on what's working for our whānau. Aye.
Tēnā koe, bro. Thank you for that. Now I've got a pātai for Wikiwira. As our health expert on the panel tonight, Tuahine. So from a health point of view, could there be another way to ensure that no one's excluded from an event at any one of our maraes? What's your whakaro on that one, Wiki?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that's something that we talk about often when we catch up as trustees, because, you know, everybody's got their stance individually on what they think should happen. And for me in particular, being inside a health organisation and seeing all of the stuff and regulations that come out quite regularly, I can often see how we could do things and keep people safe and still have the kaupapa run. So an example of that is the Nehenehenui festival. I think that was last year. And so at the time, you know, people thought, we can't do this. It's too big. I think we were at level 3 at that time, but we managed to make it happen, similar to what Tiriana is saying about the tangihanga at Te Kuitipa and how it was managed. So if we look at the Nehenehenui festival, we had people on the entry and the exit who were taking temperatures. We had a list of people as they come in and counting as they leave. We could have, and we had separate areas, but you could still see each other and still kōrero through the spaces. And so each ope or each kapa would come at their specific time. They would be brought onto the premises, do their haka, their bracket to the judges. It was recorded, and then they would be, and then they would leave, and the next one would come on. So that's just one example of how you can still have our kaupapa, do it safely, and nobody needs to be left out. You can stick within the guidelines and still maintain manaakitanga, aroha, and ngā uara Māori. And so I think if I've seen it happen, so I feel like I know that it can happen on our marae, but I understand for marae, there are more than just safety that has to be considered. There's, the cost to our people, manning it. There's also being in Maniapoto at the moment and seeing that some people aren't listening, even if we have these rules in place. So there's a whole lot of things to weigh up, but I think it's possible. I think we can do it. Personally, I do.
Kia ora wiki wira, tēnā koe tuahine. If e te whānau at home, thank you for tuning in this evening to the special broadcast on MFM Te Reo o Te Iwi on across our multi-platforms, Twitter, and right here on Facebook as well, and Whare Kōrero. But for our whānau that are tuned in via Facebook, don't forget you can throw your questions in. We'll be having a live Q&A sessions. Doesn't matter how out the gate your questions are. Put them into the live chats, and we'll do our utmost best to answer every single question that comes in. So kia kaha koutou, kei tō tātou kāinga. Radio Shannon, this one's for you, bro. How difficult is the framework going to be to manage for our marae, monitoring numbers, gathering, scanning in of vaccine passes, all of those types of things, and who's responsible for that on the marae? Is it the whānau? Is it the trustees? Where does that responsibility lie, Shannon? Kia koe.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Kaz. Ultimately, the trustees are legally responsible for anything that happens on the marae. So, to answer that question, it's the trustees. But in regards to the management of the process around having hui on the marae and with COVID, our marae, I'll use Te Kuitipa as an example. We have the manpower. We have the manpower. We have the resource to put good measures in place to manage that situation. But I feel sorry, aroha, for the smaller marae that may not have the manpower, may not have the resource to manage such a situation. We have many descendants of this marae, thousands in fact. So when I need to put a call out to the troops, so to speak, they come. And as I say, the manpower side for Te Kuitipa is pretty good, really. The only thing I would say is that, like I said earlier, the responsibility comes back onto the trustees. So ultimately, whoever you leave in charge to manage that situation around the COVID, you would want to make sure as a trustee that you're leaving that to responsible people, because if there's a scenario where some of our whānau may not adhere to the rules, adhere to the procedures that need to take place, then you could find yourself in a bit of trouble, especially from a health and safety point of view. Kia ora, cuz.
Kia ora, Shane. Thank you for that, bro. I've got a question now for Tiriana. Another tikanga one for you, bro. Do you think, to your whakaaro, do you think we're at risk of losing some of our most important cultural practices on the marae, particularly in the way we mourn our mate? Do you think that it could be inevitable that our culture, our tikanga, will evolve and go into a sort of new space? What's your whakaaro on that one, Tiriana?
I think we're definitely ready to move into a new space, and this is definitely preparing us for that. I think back to our, te whakapapa o te ao that starts in te kore. Mai te kore, ka puta atu ki, mai ngā kore, ka puta atu ki ngā pō, mai ngā pō, ka huri atu, ka tahuri mai ki te whai ao ki te ao marama. I believe that we are sitting in that, within that kore, within that state of potential. Like, I know for myself that we have lost many within our whānau that we haven't had the opportunity to mourn, but there is going to come a time where we're going to hold a celebration of those people's life, and that is, it can be seen as new to us, not having the person there and all of that, but I think back to a lot of our old tikanga and our old practices, and also our traditional way of living. Our tupuna would have come up against challenges where they would not have been able to mourn the loss of someone due to the distance that they were from that tūpāpaku. Our whānau have had that, and what we see from that, an example of that is a waiata that was written, well, it is disputed by others, but te rangi amoa e pātō hau, tērā o ngā parekura I pātu ki runga ki a tātou, and e pātō hau was another form of tangihanga that she developed within herself, for those that she had felt the loss of. She didn't have the opportunity to be there and mourn their loss because she was travelling yonder, but that gave her that opportunity to tangi. And I think, take that opportunity. I encourage our whānau to take this opportunity to write down waiata, do a mind dump, write down all the different kupu that come to mind, everything that comes to your head, write it all down. Write a waiata, write a mōteatea, write something that is relevant to your experience of loss within the COVID situation, because that will allow the future generations to feel that again, and it will give them direction, and also support and kōrero for them that you can make it, because like the theme that's been set today is we can do it and we are going to do it. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Tiriana. Tēnā koe. Ka pai e te whānau. Those of us that are watching at home on Facebook, or those that have just jumped in, tēnā koutou, if you've just joined us, we're having another exciting, engaging kōrero, te puna kōrero, te Nehenehenui. This is part 6, and how will the traffic light system impact our marae and tikanga? It's a question that's going around the whole rohe. A lot of our maraes are talking about it right now, and tonight, in fact. But this next part, Tai, and actually for our whānau, don't forget, send in your questions in the live chat right now, and our panelists will do our utmost best to answer all of your guys' questions. So kia kaha koutou. This next question is for all of our panelists, and we'll start with Wiki Wira and we'll work our way back around and finish with Tiriana. So this kaupapa has caused a lot of debate and division amongst our whānau already, especially here in Ngāti Maniapoto. Do you think that this should be an iwi-wide discussion? We should discuss it as a whole iwi, as in all of our maraes come together and talk to it all at once? Or do you think that each marae should exercise their own mana motuhake and discuss it each in their own little marae bubbles as well? What's your guys' whakaaro on that? What do you think? Yeah, what are your guys' whakaaro on that one? You first, Wiki Wira.
Yeah, good question, cuz. Mōku ake, kei ia marae tōna ake mana. I think that each marae has their own situations, their own, rurality, for want of a better word. If they're in the wops or if they're in the towns, they have so many different things about them that identify them as their own kaupapa, their own mana motuhake. So I think that iwi-wide discussions should be had, but I think they should be on frameworks on how we can move at each level, opportunities to share what worked well in other marae, what maybe they came up against and how they overcame it. But I think that at the end of the day, each marae should have the chance to make their own decisions. In the end, like Shan was saying, each marae and the trustees of each marae will be the ones liable for anything that happens on their marae. So I think equipping our marae with the tools, the information, strategies and ways to deal with this situation would be cool at an iwi level, but in the end goes back to them to make the decision. Yeah.
Kia ora tuahine. Same question for you, Shan. Kei a koe, bro?
Yeah, I think ultimately the mana lies with the people of the marae. And when I say the people of the marae, that's the ringa wera, the people, our kaumātua that man the pai. All the various people that come into play to actually run the marae on a daily basis. Because the reality is a lot of our whānau aren't at home and they rely upon the haukanga to run the marae. And our whānau quite often don't come back as probably often as they should to their own marae. But I think having a hui amongst all ngā marae o Maniapoto, to share, having a hui to share ideas, to share whakaaro around how we can all manage the situation. I think for Tikwiri Pa, we've got a lot of marae that we're situated, that are situated around us here. Te Aharo, Mōtiti, Parekaitini, Te Kōrapatu, Oparuri. So, maybe as a collective of marae, we could come up with a plan and also tautoko one another when we have our various hui on the marae, because at the end of the day, whānau, that's what we are. We are all one. We should think like that, and we should act like that. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Shannon. Tēnā koe tuakana. And the question again for Tiriana is, so with the question has caused a bit of debate and division amongst our people, and should it be an iwi-wide discussion of the current situation for the marae, or do you think it should be up to each marae of their own? For the current traffic light system within our marae and our tikanga. Tiriana, kia koe.
I think back to 1903, back to the Kawenata, and that discussion and how many people were a part of that big discussion. If I remember right, there was over 3,000 of our tupuna there. And, if we gather together, the more brains that you have, the more thinking you'll have happening in the same one time. So I think we should have a collective discussion, but kei ia ake marae tōna mana. But yeah, koe ia tērā. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Thank you all for your guys' insights on that, because I know that's a question on lots of our minds at the moment and across a lot of our marae here in Ngāti Maniapoto. So e mihana kia koutou o koutou whakaaro. Right, so I think we've got some questions in the question box. We're going to have a look in the pauaka, and we should have one pop up right about now. Ka pai, tēnā koe, Ray. And this question from Ray is, could the whānau not delegate their own? Those whānau would be responsible for making sure safety measures are being met and liaise with the trustees? We'll start with you, Wiki Wira.
Yeah, kia ora, Ray. Awesome question. We've had these discussions and for our marae trustees, and I'd assume that other marae have as well. When we talk about, the actual running of an event. So when we think about when somebody books our marae, puts through a booking for a day, usual practice without COVID around is we supply them with kia ora kare, these are the tikanga, this is how we run our marae, this is the cleaning standards. There's a whole lot of stuff in there about how we want you to treat our taonga when you come and visit us, when you visit your own marae. And so we talked about having a form of liability in that package that we give out, where it explains to them, if you don't essentially keep up the standard with these standards in terms of COVID, then you're liable. It's the same way as, when we thought about it, it was the same way where we do these things for things like cleanliness. If you don't clean up the marae, you don't get your bond back. And so it's similar to that for us, was about if you need to delegate a whānau member who will liaise, like you're saying in your question, liaise with the trustees. These are the responsibilities of that person. This is some systems that might help. So it might be like the trustee will check in with you each day. The trustees will pop up when you arrive and do their welcome, and they'll also see you off. So it might just be a few more layers of manaki that we add, so that our whānau can come and be amongst their tūranga wāwā.
Kia ora, Wiki Wira, tēnā koe. I'm actually going to throw this one at you as well, Shane. What's your whakaaro on there being a whānau delegates that will liaise with the trustees across these safety measures? Kei a koe te tuakana?
Yeah, kia ora, Auntie Ray. Thanks for your question. I think ultimately, like I said earlier, the trustees are legally responsible for the marae, but in some part we would be reliant upon our whānau to actually manage the situation there in regards to the rules and restrictions. So it would be a combination of working with the whānau and with the trustees and marae committee. Because, obviously trustees can't be available all the time to be there on the marae 24/7. So we'll have to liaise with probably someone from a whānau who has been charged with looking after the kaupapa on the marae, and having a bit of a plan in place for when whānau news the marae, like Cousin Ricky was saying, having a paperwork in place so there's guidelines and such that our whānau can follow. But yeah, it'll be a combination of both liaising with the whānau and trustees. So kia ora.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, Shane. Thank you for that pātai fire rate. Hopefully that answers your question. Keep them coming in at te whānau. Chuck them straight into the live chats and we'll throw them at our panelists and we'll do our utmost best to answer every question that comes in. Tēnā koe, Ari, this one's from you. And her question is, mihi tonu nui kia koutou pātai regarding unvaccinated whānau. How can we best support those of our whānau who have chosen to remain unvaccinated? Great pātai. I'll put this one to you, Tiriana. Tēnā koe, bro.
It's a bit of a hard question, that one, for me, because at the end of the day, it is their choice whether they want to be vaccinated or not. I know within my own whānau, I have whānau members that over the years have lost children, have had, and these are all due to vaccines, not to do with the one current vaccine, but it's been their experience. So I think the best way we can support our whānau is to actually ensure that they can still be part of the whānau. I think that's how we best support them, in ensuring that we wrap a safety net around them, and also that they are determining for themselves what safety looks like. I think the mana needs to be given back to them. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Tiriana. Hopefully that answers your question, Tiari. Great question, though. Let's have a look at another one in our pauaka. Tēnā koe kawe. And Kawe's question is, why can't we have our own kaupapa like wānanga? Why Tangi, Pokai, Anzac, and Tangihanga, etc. are live streamed where necessary and have less than 50 people on the marae at one time? Organise set times for pōwhiri and numbers, etc. How can we make this work? Or is it just a waste of time? Great question. I'll put this one to you, Wikiwira. Tēnā koe.
What an awesome question, Kawe. And I think it highlights the adaptability that Māori have, and also the use of technology that's kind of sprung up and is moving a lot faster now that a lot of these lockdowns have been happening. I've seen tangihanga live streamed. I've seen ceremonies live streamed, and I think that also comes back to some of the tikanga kōrero that Tiriana was talking about, in terms of how do we adapt our tikanga to include technology, and how does that add value to our ceremonies and our mini kaupapa, because like you say, 50 people on a marae. And most of our marae at the moment, most of them have been given some kind of marae connectivity funding. Not all of them, but most of them have, if they've applied for it, have got the opportunity to have Wi-Fi on their marae with an AV bundle, which is like a TV that has a camera on top of it. So there are heaps of funds out there at the moment that are funding our marae to make these things possible. I've seen marae and kaupapa where we set times for pōwhiri and numbers, and it's worked. I think we can make it work, but one thing that I would consider at the moment in Maniapoto is the number of people who aren't listening to those guidelines. So we can set these guidelines, these pōwhiri numbers and things, but if people don't listen, if our people are not ready for it, then how do we help them? And I think the first step is about, instead of taking it from a directive, like, hey bro, you can't come here unless you're vaccinated, we take it from a space of aroha. So, kia ora e hoa, I see you're unvaccinated. That's awesome, whether you're on the fence or off the fence. How do we ensure that you're still connected no matter what your status is? So I think there's heaps of stuff going on in that part. So hopefully it answers it for you, Kawe.
Kia ora, Wikiwira. Thank you for that. And I'm actually going to direct this one towards Tiriana, because being a bit of a technical man yourself, bro, and you've actually been in the situation of live streaming tangihanga yourself. So I'll direct this question to you, bro. He hato whakaro.
I think tēnā koe e kawe mo tō pātai. I think the question truly is, why aren't we actually live streaming things like wānanga, paukai, tangihanga, and etc. And I totally agree. We can have less than 50 people on a marae at a time, and we can also organise set times for pōwhiri and have numbers. All that sort of thing can be put in place. It has been done before. It was done for the tangi that I mentioned previously. Key thing for me too is that our marae take up, that we actually look into other, how do I put it, different methods that we can use to keep ourselves safe when we do have kaupapa on our marae. So for example, if we were to have less than 50 people on a marae at a time, we would have the RAT tests available at every single marae throughout Maniapoto, and that's the rapid antigen tests. Those tests, I won't speak on the accuracy of the tests, but they do tend to return a result within 15 minutes, as opposed to the 1 to 2 day wait. And you can actually do the testing yourself on the marae. I think that's one thing that we should be implementing on our marae, and that the government should actually be funding, because they've brought in around 300,000, I think, of those rapid antigen tests into Aotearoa for use across businesses. But yeah, totally agree. Tikanga around that, though, that needs to be established. I myself, when I do the live streaming of a tangihanga at a marae, I will ask the trustees, and then I will ask the kaumātua that the trustees advise me to ask. In actual fact, that one of the trustees that I've asked before is on this live stream, and it was Shannon. Tēnā koe, Cuz, for agreeing. And we had tikanga set out by our trustees around what can be live streamed and what can't be live streamed. And that's really key, that we actually seek out that information if we're going to go live. Even if you're just going live on your own personal page, you should be asking these questions. What can I live stream? What can't be in my live stream? All of those different questions. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe, Triana. And I think that pātai on itself is could be a puna kōrero to come, I think, because I'd be really interested to really pull that one to bits and have a look what's underneath, on the top, at the bottom, and really look at that with some real close eyes. So great question, Koe. Thank you for that one, bro. Let's have a look in the pauaka for another one. Janea, tēnā koe, kia ora, she says. What are the options for marae who might choose to follow the vaccine mandates? How would one enforce this kaupapa for whānau who turn up to grieve their mate? For example, unvaxxed whānau pani who might attend a tangihanga. That's a great question. I'm going to put this one to you, Shannon. Kei a koe tuakana.
Oh, that's a hard one. No. Yeah, hard question to answer that. Really, because I mean, at the end of the day, every marae has to go through has to come to a decision whether or not they are in fact going to use vaccine passes or not. And I suppose if you are going to use vaccine passes, you're going to come into some pretty heavy situations where whānau that may even be the whānau pani coming onto the marae that are unvaccinated, and you know, are you going to be down at the gate stopping those whānau from coming up onto the marae? It's a really hard question, and I'm sure a lot of people are tossing and turning over how they're going to manage that situation. Because, like I said before, we've got a lot of whānau that are unvaccinated. And if vaccine passes are implemented on the marae, there's going to be some really hard pressed situations where, unfortunately, some of our whānau are probably going to get into some strife and conflict over. So, to answer the question, yeah, it's a really tough situation that our
it's a big question. Yeah,
been put in, and I suppose if you look at it, maybe the government, I don't know, maybe if they mandated it, then it wouldn't possibly fall onto, you know, the hara wouldn't fall onto the trustees, but that's another conversation. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Sam. Kia ora. I'm actually going to, because, yeah, that's a real big question. Thank you, Janea. And I'm going to redirect this one back to Wiki Wira. What's your whakaaro on Janea's question, Wiki?
Cool. Yeah, good question. I think I've been looking through some of the guidelines that have been given out for marae. And one part in particular that I was like, oh, that's really interesting, was that it says in the guidelines that if any member of the pai, of the whānau pani or the ringawera are unvaccinated, then you have to run your kaupapa as if it's for without vaccine passes, so that you can allow unvaccinated people. And that ties into that ties into not having to make our marae do this. You know, so if we have whānau pani who come on and they are unvaccinated, then that means that you should run your tatangi as if it's for unvaccinated. So I think that that whakaaro there would then go, you'd have to think about that at a trustee level. Do we want to have people that are unvaccinated? And like Tiriana said, how do we keep them all connected, you know? Instead of saying, here's the vaccinated, there's the unvaccinated, it's the 90 and the 10. 90% is vaccinated so that we can keep our 10 with us. And so I think that whakaaro alone sets up our marae so that they don't have to say no to people who are unvaccinated. But if they are not prepared to do that, that could be for a number of reasons. It could be that they don't have the manpower or the cleaning power, or they're too rural to get all the stuff sorted to look after and manaki a whole whānau. Then they may decide, actually, no, we're going to close our marae for tangi. And that's up to them to decide. Yeah, I hope that answers. I hope that adds value.
Ka pai, tēnā kōrua, Shannon and Wiki, for that one. Hope that that answers your question, Janea. Thank you for the pātai. Let's have a look in our pauaka for another question. Te pau tēnā koe. I know there's been kōrero about technology, and it's been a way of connecting our people to their marae and whānau. But our people are yearning for physical ātinana connection. How do we get this balance right? Great question. I'm going to direct this one to you, Tiriana. Kei a koe, bro.
Yeah, that's quite a balance to reach when it comes to technology and ātinana. I think the balance comes down to yourself. You'll feel within yourself, like you've mentioned, that yearning for a physical connection. And there are different techniques that you can undertake to actually fulfill that yearning. And that might actually be having a mara kai, and those kai, although it might even be a mara rongoa, and you go back to home if you don't live at home, and you have some of those rongoa at home. I know it's not that all-out connection, but it's really hard, and I think our whānau overseas would have more value to add to this discussion, really, because they've been disconnected longer from home, and the effort that it takes to actually get home is a lot more than us that are living here at home. And it seems that those pressures are the same on all of us now. We're now finding it hard to get home because of all these restrictions that COVID has placed upon us. I don't think I answered your question about how do we balance that connection. So I think my answer to that pātai is a very fine balance, and that balance comes from within.
Kia ora, Tiriana. Thank you. Now I've got my own question, actually, and I'm going to throw towards Wiki and Shannon. We'll get you, Wiki, first, and then we'll come to Shannon. But my pātai is, are you both concerned about the restrictions that could impact the number of ringawera, kai karanga, kai kōrero, and our marae pai, as we're restricting our numbers already, going on to our marae? But what does that look like in numbers of whānau members that are doing the mahi, and at the back and at the front? So what's your whakaaro? We'll go to you first, Wiki Wira.
That's a good question, Kaz, because, you know, where we are, Māniaroa and Mōkau, there's not many people in our town, and not all of us are Māori in our town. And the other thing is that not all of us live at home. So even though when we look at our database of uri of Māniaroa, there are about 9,000 people who can say that they've got a whakapapa connection to Māniaroa, but they're spread across the world. So for us, it comes down to, do we have enough people at any one of those levels to operate? I have seen, I think, so if I can talk personally about my own father's tangi, we had 2 men on the pai, one wahine on each side of Dad, hei huruhuru mona, and then we had about 10 cousins at the back smashing it out. And the rest of us had to either, stand out in the street, or we'd take turns in the ringawera. So we'd have one group of ringawera who would come in while the other ringawera went home for rest. I think it's how dynamic we can be as Māori, how adaptable and how we can spread, but also how many people we have on the ground. I wish we had as many people at home as we used to, but I know it's going to grow. Our people are going to come home. And so we'll be able to do it at some point. Kia ora.
Kia ora, wiki wira, kia ora. And same partai for you, Shan. What's your whakaaro on, we're already restricted in numbers in some of our maraes around the rohe, like wiki wira said, that don't have as many whānau at home, as many ahika. Do you think this is going to impact on numbers on the pai, in the kitchen, in the whare? What's your whakaaro on that one, Bo?
Yeah, kia ora, Kaz. We're already in a scenario at the moment with some of our kaumātua that are unvaccinated. We've got ringawera that are unvaccinated. So it's going to be really tricky when we actually do open up and hold hui on the marae. Because obviously those people are essential to having hui. Especially from a tikanga point of view, you can always have a hui, which would be effectively an event rather than a hui, without our kaumātua to adhere to the tikanga of our marae. But if they're not here, yeah, that's pretty hard. And I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of other marae in the same predicament where the people they depend on to help run the marae, to help run hui at their marae, are probably in that category of unvaccinated. So how do you navigate through that? That's a pretty big open question. But I think the other thing in relation to that question is having a succession plan. Having a succession plan in place for up-and-coming ringawera, up-and-coming people to man the paipai and all those various jobs that need to be taken care of when we have a hui on the marae. So, yeah, kia ora, Kaz.
Kia ora, Shannon. Ai, tika tō kōrero, Bo. And that could be another puna kōrero that we might pull out of the box. Succession plan on the marae. That's another mean discussion. So thank you for bringing that one up, Bo, and expect a call to come back to that one too as well. We got some more partai in the box. Let's have a look at another one. Tēnā koe, Kayla. And her question is, do you think people will start to move away from tikanga Māori because they find the rules at the marae are too hard to follow and have more kaupapa, tangihanga, birthdays, etc., just at home instead? We'll start with you, Tiriana. Tēnā koe, Bo.
Awesome question, Kayla. Definitely. I think one key thing for us to actually look at is that tikanga is, I think back to my kaiako and people that have raised me and have actually shown that tikanga is a living thing. And it will change, it will develop, and it will grow. And I think so long as we are part of fostering its growth and contributing to its growth, its growth will be fruitful. But I totally agree that with the rules aside, tikanga aside, the rules that are going to be implemented onto our marae with the mandation of vaccine passes, that's probably going to be the challenge, because our challenge of late when it comes to our whānau coming home is actually this disconnect between tikanga and what tikanga is on a marae, how to operate within a marae structure setting. But I think you're definitely right, and it's already starting to happen. And it's been happening. It's been a trend over the last few years, and you'll notice that our marae have been laying dormant. Even prior to COVID, our whānau have been having their birthdays at home. So I think this is an opportunity because everybody is now noticing how, when you are told you can't do something, you'll notice that you can't do it. But when you just don't do something, like when you just don't go home for events, you won't really notice it. But because at the moment we are being told you may not be able to go home because of these vaccine passes or mandates. But I think that's really also key as well, is that we don't let the vaccine passes and the mandates push us into stopping our whānau. If it means reverting back to that no vaccine passes and following those rules, then ana. But we have to also, like the cousins have said, the succession planning, ensuring that we have the actual capacity. Kia ora.
Kia ora, tēnā koe Triana. We're coming up to our last couple of questions e te whānau. Let's have a look at another one in the box. Tēnā koe kawe. I hear a lot of people telling me and showing me our people have large tangihanga at homes and parties at the end. Is this a concern or nothing to worry about? Great question. I'll put that one to you, Wiki Wira. Tēnā koe tuahine.
Yeah, that is a good question, Kawe. I think, as Māori, our natural instinct is to be together, is to connect, especially in times of tangihanga. And I think that's actually one of the hardest things is to keep people away. I have seen it happen where whānau have had tangi at home, and they've managed to maintain just small numbers, just their own immediate whānau. And I've seen other instances where it was hard to keep people away because of not because people don't want to listen to the kōrero, or that they're trying to be kino, or that they're trying to spread the disease, but that their aroha for that person and their whānau is at the forefront of their mind. So that I don't think we should worry about, because I think that is aroha in action. I think the need to want to look after somebody we shouldn't have to worry about, but we should worry about how we show that aroha. So essentially it's putting out messages like, in order to show aroha to your people, stay further away, send one representative instead of the whole ope. Go on selected times, let the person know when you're coming so that they can make sure that everyone's safe. Those are essentially the ways that we keep our whānau, that we should be showing our aroha, because you wouldn't want our whānau who have a tangihanga, you wouldn't want to show up and you want to be there, you want to give your aroha, but you also don't want to give them the COVID. So I think that's just something that it's a culture that we need to start building, so that our people understand that we want to be there, we want to support you, but how do we do that safely in this new world? And it's something that each whānau will have to talk about. So probably just talking to each whānau about it. What's your tikanga when you have a tangi? Do you have a plan if somebody was to pass? Who's your first person you're going to call? Who's going to be on your pai? Who's going to do your kai? Have you already talked to these people? I know that tangi are not things that we can plan. Sometimes they are, because we know that our people are on their way out. But when they're not, it's hard. It springs on us. And so the aroha just comes out.
Kia ora, Wira. Thank you for that. Some great advice there, as well as some main topics to kōrero on as well there. So thank you for that, tuahine. We've got another question in our pauaka. Kia ora, Renee. And Renee's question is, kia ora. Within a whānau, a mama and her pepe and other tamariki, for example, being vaccinated and non-vaccinated, how would this situation be handled? Just thinking we have segregation, not just individuals, but within a whānau. That's a good question, Renee. I'm going to pass that one to Shannon. Tēnā koe, bro.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough question to answer, but I suppose if we go back to what our cousin Tiriana said, and this is something I was told many years ago, that if we can't show aroha and we can't show manaakitanga on our marae, then I don't think we have a place on the marae. So, it's about having a plan in place, like I was saying earlier, to sort of navigate through these various situations. I mean, there's going to be some really tough situations to try and navigate through, and these are some of the issues that need to be nailed out, I suppose, fleshed out, so that we, those that are going to be managing the marae, managing the situation, have a better understanding of how we can go about that. So yeah, it's really hard. Like I was saying earlier, we've all been thrust into a position where we don't really want to. You know, I personally wouldn't want to ban people from coming onto their marae. It's within us. It's our whakapapa right to be able to come onto our marae, and when we have somebody at the gate saying no, you can't. Yeah, that will really cause some unshakable emotions, I would imagine. It's almost like, you know, if you were to stop somebody from going into their own urupa, that would be another scenario. I don't know if that comes into the mixture of unvaccinated and vaccinated, but yeah, real tough times ahead, I think.
Kia ora, Stan. Thank you for that, bro. Let's have a look at. I think this is our final question for tonight, and it's from Te Pau. I have heard kōrero by some whānau saying, if we refuse to allow the unvaccinated on our marae, we are denying them of their whakapapa. What's your whakaaro? Tiriana, kei a koe, bro?
I think my answer to that would be absolutely. We are definitely denying them of their whakapapa. If we actually, so this is what I've grown up to understand and know with our marae, is that how we see our marae and how they're laid out now, that has come from our tupuna of the 1800s. After colonization, they put all of our taonga, such as whakapapa, into a whare, a single whare, and that whare would be a whare kura. And that pā, so we went from pā tū wata wata, pā maioro, pā whakairo, and then moved into pā whare kura, and we combined all of those things into this one place. And if that's where all of our taonga are, and we are going to deny someone from going to view and be part of that sharing of that taonga that was left for all of us, not just vaccinated, then definitely we are denying them of their whakapapa. And I go back to what I said before, is that if we have to move, if we have to drop down to the requirements that are set at a no vaccine pass event, then that's what we have to do for that time being. I think we should actually be looking at also what is the government's responsibility to Māori in this space? What is the resourcing they should be offering to our marae trustees, to our whānau that have to go through this, because this is hindering our cultural identity, our ability to actually express who we are as Māori, especially when it comes to tangihanga. That just makes me very sad when it comes to a tangi and you can't have whānau there because they're not vaccinated. That is, I actually think back to a kōrero of a elder of the Native American whānau. His name is Good Buffalo Eagle. He states that we, all two-legged beings, are born with one gift, and that gift is the gift of choice. And at no point should we be taking that gift away from our whānau. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe te tōkana, Tiriana. Thank you for that answer, bro. Primo, mean answer. Aole te whānau, that's us for tonight. We've actually come to an end. I want to thank everybody that's tuned in via Twitter, via Whare Kōrero app, and also right here on Facebook, MFM Te Reo o Te Iwi. Thank you for your pātai that have come in. We've done our utmost best to answer every single one. We've even gone over time a little bit just to get some last few questions in. So hopefully you guys had some answers there for your questions. So thank you for sending those in. Just a reminder, this is actually our last Puna Kōrero for this year. We're going to be taking a short whakatā over Christmas and New Year's, but we'll definitely be back in the new year for some more Puna Kōrero o te Nehenehenui. But like I said right at the start, we've only just scratched the surface of this kōrero of our marae being vaccinated and unvaccinated and vaccinated marae. But moving forward, hopefully the conversation is still quite new now, where a lot of our marae are still having the conversation now. So in the new year, when we come back, hopefully we'll have some of our marae and our trustees come into the Puna Kōrero who have made a decision and have a kōrero with us, and of course to the rest of the iwi, and help the rest of us gauge some knowledge and some things around helping us make a decision as well. So that'll be us in the new year, i te whānau. But for now, thank you to everybody tuned in at home. And I want to do a big mihi and thank you to our wonderful panelists for this evening, Tiriana and Wikiwira and Shannon. Thank you, Aku Whanaunga, for your guys' wisdom, your guys' manaakitanga, and your aroha. Kia mātou katoa, no reira, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Let's have a look at the vaccination centres for tomorrow e te iwi, Friday the 17th of December. Taumaranui Cosmopolitan Club at 10 a.m. through to 3 p.m. The Maniapoto Whānau Order Centre at Tikwiti 8:30 right through to 5 p.m. And the Tikwiti Medical Centre 9 a.m. right through to 5 p.m. The Countdown Car Park here in Otorohanga 10 a.m. right through to 4 p.m. And of course back down to Taumaranui at the Cosmopolitan Club 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Kia kaha koutou. Be safe out there. Look after one another. Be kind most of all. And of course show that manaakitanga that we've all talked about tonight. But for me, for another year of Te Puna Kōrero, thank you to everybody that's tuned in thus far. We're only getting started with these Puna Kōrero e te whānau, so we'll be definitely coming back next year to spark some more kōrero throughout the iwi. But thank you again to our panelists. And from me, it's been a pleasure being your host, Leon Hemara. But for all of our whānau at home, e mihi ana kia koutou katoa, ngā manaakitanga kia koutou katoa as well. So, i te whānau, the sign off from me, Pō Marie, hei a te rātou. Tēnā rā koutou katoa.